Hi, fourth graders. My name is Linnea, and I work at Larchmont Public Library, and I'm here to talk to you about some of the best books that came out in 2020. So one of the first books I want to talk about, which was absolutely one of my favorites, it's a little scary. It's also a mystery. It's called Scritch Scratch, and it's about a girl named Claire who lives in Chicago, and her dad runs a haunted tour bus company. And she thinks this is super embarrassing. So he has this big bus with like ghost pictures on the side and everything. And the other thing, besides being embarrassing, she doesn't really want to tell her friends about it or tell people at school, is that she's also kind of scared of it. She's heard some of the stories. They're a little bit creepy. But one night he's short-staffed and Dad asks her to come sit on the bus with him and help him with the ghost tour. So she goes on the bus and she's getting scared by all the stories he's telling, and she notices a little boy on the bus. This little boy is dressed in old-fashioned clothing and he's all wet, and she's wondering if he could be a ghost. She figures out that this boy is a ghost, and she starts seeing him everywhere. She doesn't know how to get rid of him, so she talks to her friends. She finally tells her brother and one of her friends at school, and they realize that they have to figure out what the ghosts want and learn more about him to get rid of him. So they do, and it ends up being an interesting mystery. Another book I liked is called Stand Up Yumi Chang, and it's about a girl named Yumi whose parents own a Korean barbecue restaurant, and so she has to work there all the time after school. And she's excited for the summer because even though she'll have to work, she'll get a little bit of a break. But then her mom tells her that she's going to have to spend all summer being tutored. Her mom wants to send her to a fancy private school, and to make sure that she gets in and she beats all the tests, she has to go to this other school all summer. And Yumi doesn't want to do that. And she accidentally, on her way to go to tutoring, runs into a workshop that is being run by one of her favorite YouTubers all about doing stand-up comedy. Yumi loves this YouTuber and she loves stand-up comedy. So instead of going to tutoring, she ends up joining the camp. And she also lies to her parents. And things work fine for a while, but as with most lies, eventually everything falls apart. Here in the Real World is by Sarah Pennypacker. You might have read some of her other books. She writes Pax, and she also wrote the Clementine books. This book is about a boy named Ware, and Ware likes to hang out by himself. He's not a sports guy. He doesn't have a ton of friends. He kind of just likes to sit in his room and imagine. And his parents decide that over the summer, instead of imagining things, they're going to send him to summer camp. And Ware does not want to go to summer camp. So instead of going to summer camp, he sneaks over the fence and he finds this empty lot. And there's a broken down church in it and lots of interesting plants and stuff. And so he starts fixing up the church to look like a castle. And while he's there, he runs into a girl named Jolene. Jolene is also fixing up part of the area of the church to make her own papaya farm. So together they decide to keep this lot secret and they hang out every day there. The only problem is one day, a big car pulls up and they find out that the lot is going to be torn down. And this is their special place. So they try to find a way to save it. Prairie Lotus is a historical fiction book. That means it takes place in the past. And it's about a girl named Hannah who moves to a town with her father. And she's really good at sewing and making clothes. And she wants to live there happily with her father. But you find out that they haven't been able to live very well in a lot of towns before. And you find out her secret is that she's half Chinese. And a long time ago, people were racist and they did not want to hang out with Chinese people or go to the same school as Chinese people. So Hannah tries to go to school for the first couple weeks, and eventually all the kids drop out of school because the parents won't let her go to school with them. So she tries to find a way to get the people in town to accept her. It's really interesting, it's really sad, and it does have a really good happy ending. Kiki's Delivery Service is another book I liked. Some of you might have seen the movie. There's a movie called Kiki's Delivery Service. It's actually based on this book, but it's a lot different than the book. So if you've seen the movie and you liked it and you want new adventures, read the book. If you've never seen the movie, it's also okay. So Kiki, as you can guess, is a witch. And the rule for witches in this story is that when you turn 13, you have to leave your house and you have to live away from your family for a year and find a way to make your living. So Kiki leaves on her birthday and she goes to a new town. And she's so excited The only problem is when she moves to the new town, they're not used to witches, so they're all scared of her. The other problem is, like a lot of witches have powers with fortune telling and maybe potions and things like that, Kiki's only power is she knows how to use a broom. So she sets up a delivery service, and each chapter is about her delivering a different package and meeting new characters. The last book I wanted to talk about is called The List of Things That Will Not Change by Rebecca Stead, and it's about a girl named Bee whose parents are divorced. And even though they're divorced, they gave her a list of things that won't change. And one of the big things is, no matter what, they will always love her, and they will always be a family. But now things are changing. Even though her mom and dad aren't together and they still love her and they're still a family, her dad's getting married again. He's getting married to a man named Jesse. And she finds out that Jessie has a daughter exactly her age, and she's really excited to have a sister because she's been an only child, and she's so excited to do this. But she finds out that Jessie's daughter isn't that excited and doesn't want to really be part of a new family. So many things are changing in Bee's life. She wonders if all the lists that she made of things that won't change actually aren't true. Next, I'm going to talk to you about graphic novels. So I have some new graphic novels to talk about and some sequels. I'll talk about some new ones first. So this graphic novel, in a way, isn't new because some of you might have read The Witches by Roald Dahl. Now there's a graphic novel version. If you haven't read it, it's about witches. They are everywhere, and their big goal is to get rid of children. Now there's a boy who is visiting the seaside with his grandma, and he accidentally stumbles upon a meeting of the witches, including a meeting with the Grand High Witch, the head of all the witches. And he doesn't escape this meeting unharmed, but he figures out a way with his grandmother to destroy all the witches in the world. It's very funny and it's a little bit scary. Now, if you like the science comics, or if you like Nathan Hale's Hazardous Tales, there's a new series of comics out called History Comics. One of the ones that I really liked is called The Roanoke Colony. If you don't know, the Roanoke Colony was a settler colony that existed back when the Americas were just getting started. And a whole colony was set up. Some settlers stayed and some left. The ones that left came back a couple years later, and the whole colony was gone. Nobody knows what happened to them. Nobody knows where they went. So this book talks about the history of that colony and what they think might have happened. The other two graphic novels I want to talk about are sequels and parts of a series. They're actually great graphic novels, though, because you don't have to read the whole series to understand what's going on. So if you want to start with these and go backwards, you can. If you want to read their first books, you can do that too. So one of the books I was going to talk about is from the Click series. So if you've read Click, you might know her. This is Olive. And this book, Olive is going to run for class president. And she runs for president of student council because she goes on a field trip and she notices that some of her classmates haven't gone on the field trip. And she finds out that that's because you had to pay a certain amount to go on the field trip. And some of her fellow students can't afford to do that. And Olive doesn't think that's fair. So she decides to run for student council so that people won't have to pay for field trips. She wants to think of ways that the class can work so that everybody can go, like having a bake sale, things like that. So especially with the election that just happened, this is a very appropriate book to read. The other book I want to talk about was called Class Act. It's the sequel to New Kid. I don't know, some of you might have read New Kid last year. I read it. I actually liked this book better than New Kid, so just letting you know. Read it, tell me what you think. If you remember, New Kid is about a boy named Jordan who goes to this new fancy school. Well, this book is about his classmate, Drew. So Jordan is still in the book, but this is mostly about Drew. So Drew has two friends, Jordan from the first book and Liam. And over school break, Jordan and Drew go to Liam's house and they find out that Liam is super rich, like mansion, big fancy car, servants rich. And Drew feels really uncomfortable with that. He didn't know that Liam had such a different life than him, and he's wondering if with those differences, if they could actually be friends. And he kind of starts avoiding Liam. And this makes Jordan really sad because Jordan still wants to be friends with Drew and Liam, and now he can't get them to hang out in the same place. On top of that, Drew is also dealing with a girl who keeps baking him stuff, like all the time, and it's very clear that she has a crush on him and he doesn't know what to do about it. Now I'm going to talk to you about some nonfiction books that I like. So one book that I really liked is called Incredible Jobs You've Probably Never Heard of. And just like the title says, it's full of interesting jobs that exist that you've probably never thought about or heard of. I'm going to share with you some of my favorites. There's lots and lots and lots in the book. So one of my favorites was cow massager. So apparently in Japan, they want their beef to taste good and they want their cows super relaxed for that. So they have somebody come and massage the cows so they're relaxed. Another job that I didn't know existed, but apparently does, is a mattress jumper. They pay people to jump on the beds so they can check for lumps and they can check that everything like is structurally sound. So if you want to learn about interesting jobs or you're looking for an interesting job, it's a good book to look at. Another book I liked is called Rocket Science, A Beginner's Guide to the Fundamentals of Spaceflight. And it's all about how rockets work. So what powers them, how their guidance systems work, how they navigate. Because imagine navigating in space. It's almost like navigating blind. You can't see up there. So it's up to the sensors that you install on your rocket and getting them to work to figure out where you're going and how to get there. Another book that I liked, which was super funny and gross, horribly gross, is called Who Gives a Poop? And yes, it's facts all about poop. And it's been super popular, so we haven't had it back in the library for a while, so here's just a picture of the cover. If you like really gross facts and you want to share them with your friends and family, this is a book to read. All right, the last book I want to talk to you is a part of a series. It's a nonfiction series called History Smashers. So this one is about the Mayflower. There's one coming up about the Titanic in February, so if you like the Titanic, that would be a good book for you to read. The Mayflower book I found incredibly interesting because it tells you the real story of Thanksgiving. You were all told the cute story of Thanksgiving when you were kindergarten, first grade. Now you're going to learn the real story of Thanksgiving in this book. Also, it has a lot of interesting facts and diagrams showing you how the early settlers lived and the Pilgrims lived. For instance, they have a cutout of what their homes might have looked like. They have bits of letters and interesting things like that. So I have lots and lots and lots and lots of other books I could talk about, but I've already talked about a lot. If you want to see the whole list of favorite books that we had for fourth graders, you can look at our website. You can also call us or send us an email at the library and we can put books on hold for you to pick up. Happy reading!